Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. You're listening to our Dungeons and Dragons game. I'm your host, the Dungeon Master. And if you've never heard one of my videos before on this podcast, uh, this is a great jumping on point. All you really need to know about our campaign thus far is there is this moon called Atropos the Endbringer. And the idea is, even though it's a moon, it's a character. It's an evil character, and it's undead. And so what it does is it crashes into a world, and it simultaneously is like draining the life force from that planet while also raising the dead of that planet, so that then Atropos has this undead army. Um, but he destroys planet after planet, leaving death and destruction in his wake. So in that respect, just very in the most vague of terms, he's kind of like Galactus from Marvel. Or like for me, I'm a big Transformers fan. He's a lot like a character called Unicron from Transformers. But at any rate, so that is sort of the long-term threat in our game is Atropos. So the planet that they are on currently, the party's on a world called Orth, and there's a series of books called Greyhawk, and that is the setting for the Greyhawk game, is the planet Orth. And so right now, Atropos is just a tiny little black speck up in the sky, and he's pretty far away, but he's still coming here, right? So the party, their goal is, one of the members of the party is a guy named Arthur, and he's from Earth. And he has been here before to the Barrier Peaks. He's been in the ship before, and he hasn't been through the entire ship. He's been here twice before, where the first time they cleared level 1 of this dungeon, and one of the problems is there's a ton of mold. And the party he was with at the time didn't really have a good way of dealing with mold. So in various party members were getting sick and so on and so forth. So they ended up kind of abandoning the ship and leaving and not going further into the dungeon that time. Then he came back a second time, and things had changed slightly. Where there's like some squatters had come into the ship, and some stuff like that. So again, he came because there was something he needed, he got it, and he left. So now this is his third time, kind of third time's the charm. So he's come back to the ship again. He sort of knows a few things about how this works, and he's telling his party members about it. So one of the other guys in the party is named Bart. Bart is a beholder who is a magic user. And Bart's goal is, because everybody hates beholders, he wants to be able to gain the ability to polymorph because he wants to turn into a human. Um, so as he levels up, he's getting closer to the point where he'll be able to do that. There's another member of the party named Voltaris Yol. And Voltaris, one of his parents is a dark elf, and the other one is a red dragon. So we used the half dragon template when we made Voltaris. But at any rate, he looks like a demon. He's a biped with pointy ears, which he gets from the elf side of the family. but then it's like he's red and he's got wings and horns and stuff like that from the other side of the family. So people always assume he's a demon and they hate him because of that. So he's kind of interested, like if the other guy figures out polymorph, he's hoping maybe he can help him out too. Um, let's see who else. We've got two big characters. They're both about 9 feet tall. They're both green. You could maybe think of them almost like the Hulk and She-Hulk in a way. And they look like barbarians. So the girl is wearing like a chainmail bikini. And her name is Min. And then her brother's name is Grabthar. And Grabthar is wearing just kind of like a loincloth kind of a thing. They're very strong characters. I'll just leave it at that for now. If I get too into their backstories, first of all, this video would just take forever. But then also, I don't want to confuse any potential new listeners. Feel like I'm leaving somebody out. Gamish. Gamish is a cool character. He was a Tinker Gnome. He'd been in our game forever. And then recently he died. And so when he died, my son plays him. We allowed him to keep playing Gamish as a ghost. So that's his deal. And then a new addition to the party is a guy named Bodger, who is also a tinkerer. He's not a gnome. But he how do I want to put this? If Gamish is more almost like a scientist in a way, Bodger is more of like a grease monkey. You know what I mean? More kind of physical stuff. But at any rate, he's the newest member of the party. Oh, and then Eliza the Air Maiden. Air Maidens are a race from a book called Deities and Demigods. And so they look like angels, but they're not really angels. Their stats are basically human level stuff. But her claim to fame is if you kill her, she respawns. And it's the only race I can think of in D&D where you can kill Eliza and she will respawn, and then she has to go loot her own body to get the stuff back that she lost, last time she died. So yeah, that's pretty cool. She's in the party. I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anybody out. I think that's it. At any rate, so they go up this mountain, they get to this metal door, which of course I used AI to generate an image of this. And Arthur explains that what's going to happen is the door is going to open up for 1 hour, and then it's going to stay shut for 20 hours. So he warns them, like if you don't have, like if you want a wineskin full of drinking water, or if whatever it is you need, make sure you have it before we go in. Because once we go in, we're stuck in here for basically a day. So they wait for a little bit, and then the door opens and they go in. And the Barrier Peaks module, they give you a map for the ship. This is level 1. The map is circular. And the player characters come in through the bottom of the map. So they're at the southernmost tip of this circle. And so we see area 1, and that is the airlock. And once they've entered, the door behind them shuts, and then the door in front of them opens. And so then they're able to step out. When they walk out here, it basically looks kind of like a shopping mall, honestly, except it's dark. They're in a big square area here. In the center of the square, like a lot of malls would have like a fountain kind of at center court. It's a similar idea, but this fountain is more like a hole in the ground that goes down to lower decks. And it was kind of impressive. Bart completely guessed what this was for, that he guessed that it used anti-gravity technology and that it wasn't working and so on and so forth. So that was kind of cool. And then there's basically two hallways here. One goes left, or I guess I should say west. So the west hallway is area 3, and then the right hallway is area 4. And then there's a hallway that goes straight north towards the center of the ship. And there's two, again, to use the mall analogy, think of it like stores. Like right there at the corner of center court on the left and the right there is room number 5 and room number 6. So room number 6 is completely dark, and center court, by the way, is completely dark, and the hallways 3 and 4 are completely dark. Um, room number 5 though is well lit, and it's actually an arcade. So everybody sees the light and they just naturally want to head that way, right? So as they start walking over there, they encounter their first monster. And so everybody rolled a saving throw, and Min, who is the big green chick in the chainmail bikini, she's the one who failed the saving throw. So this thing drops off the ceiling, and again, it's dark, so they can barely see anything, and it attaches to her face. So it's kind of like a face hugger from the Aliens movies. And what this thing is like on the ocean floor, there are certain fish that can camouflage themselves. So they just look like more ocean floor, basically, right? They look like sand or whatever. That's what this thing does, but it was doing that to the ceiling. So we roll initiative. It's the first fight of this adventure, of this module. And Bart goes first. And Bart has something on his sheet. You'll have to forgive me. I forget what it's called now, but it means that at the beginning of the adventure, he gets to go twice. It's kind of a once per game session kind of an ability. So he casts Death Ray using his beholder powers. Um, and he takes away about half of the monster's hit points. And then because he gets to go a second time, he does it again. That takes away the other half of the monster's hit points, and it comes off of her face. It detaches and it's dead. And then he uses disintegrate to get rid of the body so it doesn't get up and slither off or something like that. From there, everybody heads straight north into room number 5, which again we said is an arcade. And the ship has maintenance robots. It has a variety of different kinds of robots, and the ship is malfunctioning. The ship's computer is malfunctioning. The robots are malfunctioning, so on and so forth. So sometimes they know there's a certain room they're supposed to clean. So room number 5 is actually in really, really good shape. Room number 6 across the hallway there is in really, really bad shape. So they're kind of like equal opposites. But at any rate, the PCs look around the arcade. They've never, of course, they're fantasy characters, so they've never seen an arcade before. The arcade games are lit up and functional, and so on and so forth. Uh, Arthur, who again is from Earth, kind of tries to explain what these things are. And the module allows for the characters to basically play first-person shooters, and if they do, then later in the module, when you start to actually encounter beam weapons, it makes that character better at using these things, right? But nobody did it. Nobody played any of those games, so they don't get that bonus later. They search the arcade, they don't find anything valuable, so they move on. So they go straight across the hallway there to room number 6. And room number 6, you can tell that there were some squatters in here at one point who started a campfire, so the floor is burned up and damaged. A bunch of the furniture in this room got hacked up, and they were using that for the fire. So there's a lot of damage in here. But they don't see the squatters. They search this room, and Arthur finds a letter written in his own language from Earth, and it says that at one point when the airlock had opened, an intellect devourer entered the ship. And so the PCs don't know if that's still running around or how many years has that been. Is it maybe dead by now? They don't know. So everybody else does a search check, and almost everybody finds a color-coded card. And so these cards are really important in this dungeon. And depending on what color you have, it does various things. Certain colors open certain rooms that are locked. Certain colors, like if a robot catches you in the hallway, if it sees you have the right card, then it thinks you're a crewman and it leaves you alone. And if you, for instance, don't have any cards on you, it might think you're an intruder and it will attack you. So it kind of just depends on the situation. But the cards they find in here, there's a purple one, an orange one, a brown one, and a black one. And about 3/4 of the party then has a card. At any rate, after that, they head into hallway number 4. And while they are here, they find a robot that has been in a fight with something or other, and it's damaged, and it's leaning against the wall, kind of like sitting on the floor with its back against the wall. And so Bodger examines this robot and is trying to see if he can fix it or not. And the module has rules for that. And so he rolls some dice. And one of the things that can happen when you attempt that is you can touch an exposed wire and you take a really bad shock. So Bodger got so badly shocked it almost killed him, actually. He had like 1 or 2 hit points left. And so they told Gamish to sort of, because what Gamish was doing, again, he's the ghost of a Tinkernet. And when he entered the dungeon here, he had possessed a warforged body, which is basically like a D&D robot, right? So he was doing that to physically interact with the world. They tell Gamish to like abandon the warforged body and see if you can possess the ship. And they're hoping that maybe he'll have the ability to open doors for him or shut off hostile robots, things like that. So Gamish, they find an empty room down by the airlock where they came in, where they stash his body in there. And then yeah, he tries to go take possession of the ship itself. At any rate, so Bodger, since he's messed up and only has a couple hit points, they ask him to guard Gamish's body, which really was their way of just sticking Bodger in a room where hopefully he won't encounter anything and will stay safe. So, following hallway number 4, they go up to room number 7. And then room number 7 is a kitchen. And the interesting thing they have in here is they have replicators, just like in Star Trek. And so the idea is these are machines that can just make food. Um, and then on either side of the kitchen to the east and west are two large rooms that are like cafeterias, basically. Um, so the PTs, when they walk into the darker cafeteria, which is the eastern cafeteria, when they walk in there, they encounter two Vegapygmies. And if you're unfamiliar with a Vegapygmy, which they were a big deal in Gamma World, and this ship is related to Gamma World. That's a long story. Maybe I'll talk about that some other time. But the idea of the Vegapygmies is they're like a zombie, but the thing that makes you become a zombie is they are infected with mold. And so then the idea is that if a Vegapygmy kills you, then it can spread its mold to you and it can basically assimilate you, kind of like the Borg from Star Trek. And then you are a Vegapygmy now. And then you get back up as a moldy zombie, basically, right? But then you can also now infect other characters. So the PTs don't know who these two Vegapygmies are. They don't know if they're crewmen or if maybe these are the squatters from room 6 that we mentioned earlier. But the PCs kill the Vegapygmies, but they got to be careful because of this mold. They do it without incident. They don't get infected or anything, thankfully. And then Bart uses his disintegration and gets rid of the Vegapygmies' bodies and kills all the mold. Um, and then, so the way I like to run games is I do a prologue, and then there's the main plot, and then there's the epilogue. So the epilogue for this game is right across the hallway. There is room number 9, and it's basically the security station. And there's a security robot in here. And so the PCs deal with the security robot and then take a long rest in the security station, where they have access to weapons and stuff like that now, so that if anything comes in to come after them, they can try to deal with it. But then, so that's it. That was it for the game I ran tonight. Uh, the other thing I should say is where I live, actually, tonight, there's a really bad ice storm. And I live in the middle of nowhere. I literally live in a log cabin in the woods, um, on an old dirt road. And so when we get ice storms out here, all the power lines and stuff like that are very old and they are not as well maintained as we would like them to be. And so if it's just windy enough, we can lose electricity for the night. And so it was very windy earlier tonight, and so our lights went out while I was running the game. And and then my computer had been plugged in, my computer shut off, and I was running the adventure as I had it on PDF. So that was why we quit playing then. And it'd kind of been a long day for all the players, and they were sort of ready to wrap up anyway. But yeah, that's why we didn't go further. Normally I'd like to get a little more of the adventure taken care of, but that's why we stopped where we stopped. I'm trying to think if there's anything else worth saying about that. That's pretty much it, I guess. Um, I'm really happy we're doing the Barrier Peaks module. It's my favorite D&D module ever. I'm really looking forward to clearing the entire ship finally, which I've never actually done before. And the goal is to, once Atropos destroys this planet, the goal is to have the ship out in space again flying. I just think that would be really neat because it's such an iconic ship. And I used to own a comic book store about 20 years ago, and I would often, hear the conversation between usually a sort of a veteran D&D player would be talking to a newer guy who's still learning the ropes. And the veteran would mention, "Did you know they had a D&D game with a crashed UFO?" And whoever the rookie was would be like, "Wow, really?" Um, so I feel like this adventure is notorious and just a really big part of the D&D mythos. So that makes me even more excited to be doing stuff with it. At any rate, I enjoyed this adventure. I hope that you enjoyed hearing about it. If you want to support the channel, by all means, please take a moment to hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, leave us a comment. Let us know if you've ever played the Barrier Peak stuff. If so, how did it go? That kind of thing. Um, and that's it. So I hope everybody has a good one, and I'll see you next time. Bye.